Ah, movies with twists. Everyone loves them. The experience of expecting one thing and then being thrown into a completely unpredictable direction is a unique feeling that everyone loves except maybe Star Wars fans. Even better though is that when rewatching a favorite twist-based movie is that you'll notice some serious foreshadowing that you probably missed the first time around. Some movies throw in subtle nods towards their ultimate conclusion, while others include blatant signposts for how everything's going to turn out. However big or small, we often miss these moments the first time around and then feel like big old idiots when we rewatch and go, oh yeah, how did we not see that? I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 massive movie twists that were secretly obvious. Number 10. A monologue acts as an admission of guilt. Searching. Searching is one of the finest mystery thrillers of the last decade, and its screen-within-a-screen framing only made the puzzle solving even more heightened. You spend the entire movie with John Cho as he searches, hence the title, for his missing daughter Margot. Like the character though, on more than one occasion you miss the obvious clues that are literally staring you in the face in the many open tabs and screens on the computer. The biggest of which comes from the detective on the case, who reveals to Cho's David that her son once made up a charity to steal money from gullible neighbours, and when this was found out, she went along with the lie to avoid her son getting in serious trouble. This essentially works as a further admission of guilt though, as later it's revealed that her son is actually the one responsible for the disappearance of Margot, and that she had been actively hiding evidence and twisting the narrative as the leading detective to protect him. Number 9. You don't bring back a character for 2 seconds. Saw 3D. This one is possibly the laziest twist on this entire list. Here, it was extremely easy to see it coming that Cary Elwes' Dr. Lawrence Gordon, who was the quote-unquote survivor of the first film, is secretly Jigsaw's third apprentice and has been for years. Although the idea of Els ever returning to the franchise had been played down in the press, not least because he had sued the studio for underpaying him for the first movie, as soon as he turned up in Saw 3D, it was clear that he was set to play a core role. To make matters worse, he turned up right at the very start, essentially spoiling the film's twist at record-breaking pace. Although the franchise had returned to Saw's iconic bathroom a number of times before, Saw 3D opened with an Els starring flashback, which set the film's conclusion out fairly conclusively. I mean, after all, what would be the point in the scene if it wasn't going to be relevant later on, or that Dr. Gordon was going to play a much bigger role in this movie? It also didn't help that Gordon had been the subject of fan theories for years as well, all of them hypothesizing that he was absolutely one of Jigsaw's apprentices. Number 8. Söze actually means verbal in Turkish, the usual suspects. It would be impossible to have a list on twists without mentioning the usual suspects. The entire film is spooled out from verbal Kint's perspective via an interrogation, so the idea that him himself could be the villain would rarely cross the viewer's mind on first viewing, not least because of the fake-out reveal early in the film as well. However, there are clues. One is the recognizable gold watch and gold lighter used by Söze at the beginning and later seen among Kint's personal possessions. It's a tiny moment, but much more noticeable on a second viewing. Additionally, when Kint tries to light a cigarette with his right hand, he can't. It's important to note that Söze is left-handed, but Kint claims to have a disabled left arm. And if you listen very closely at one point, there's a dialogue exchange where Kint exclaims, "I did it, I did kill Keaton," but nobody hears because the other characters are too busy shouting. We also don't see Kint get arrested with the other characters at the start of the film. Oh, and finally, as the title suggests, in Turkish, sözlü translates as verbal, so it would be very obvious to you if you happen to speak both languages. Number 7. The birds spell it out. The Prestige. The Prestige's chief twist reveals that Christian Bale's character Alfred Borden achieves the impossible the transported man trick using his secret twin brother. Hugh Jackman's Robert Angier, on the other hand, the big numpty that he is, achieves his imitated version of this trick by repeatedly cloning himself and then disposing of the duplicates. It's not worth the hassle if you ask me, mate. Anyway, at the start of the film, Michael Caine shows who we learn is Borden's daughter later on, the disappearing bird trick, which constitutes killing a dove every time the trick is done. And there's one big tease of what's to come. When the trick is repeated later on, a boy responds to the concluded trick by saying, "But where's his brother?" essentially telling you the twist before you've even started actually thinking about it. In fact, there are more teasers than this throughout that Bale is playing two different characters. The disparate behaviour towards the two women in his life, his diary entry that refers to two young men at the start of a great career, and two young men devoted to an illusion, who we all wrongly assume to refer to Angier and Borden, not the two Bordens. All in all, we really should have seen this one coming. Number 6. Dogs are the best judge of character. Knives Out. Knives Out works as a brilliant mystery film because despite being incredibly unpredictable and surprising, its core plot isn't all that confusing or convoluted. In fact, one of its biggest twists, that Chris Evans' Ransom was the mastermind behind the plot to kill his father, is practically shoved down the audience's throat from the get-go. From the testimonies of the other family members, it's clear that this charmer with a sick taste in sweaters is the rotten apple of the group. They all have their own motives, of course, but they all make one thing clear. Ransom is the only one capable of doing something this evil for his own gain. However, it is one specific clue that's the dead giveaway though. The fact that the dogs absolutely hate Ransom. Early in the movie, they're shown to take a particular disliking to him, as he's the only character they actually bark at. Consequently, when one of the clues the night of the murder is barking dogs, and it's one of the only tidbits left unexplained for a little while, the movie is practically yelling at you that Ransom had to be involved somehow. Throw on top of this that the great nana of the family refers to the character we think is responsible as Ransom because she saw him the night of the murder previously, and the writing was on the wall the whole time. Number 5. Shyamalan actually puts in several clues. The Visit. The Visit was M. Night Shyamalan's back-to-form passion project, but it still featured the trademarked third act twist. The film focuses on siblings Rebecca and Tyler, who travel alone to meet their elderly grandparents for the very first time. Although the fact that these grandparents turn out to be evil comes as no surprise, it is a sizable twist when it is revealed that they're not actually the children's grandparents at all. Instead, they're escaped mental hospital patients who killed the real grandparents, both of whom were actually their counselors. But the signs were there from the start, and not just in the elderly duo's erratic behavior. We should have seen this one coming when two separate visitors came looking for the real grandparents, claiming that they hadn't been into the hospital they work at this week, and that the fake grandparents were never around to actually answer the door. Number 4. The roleplay is obvious. Shutter Island. Shutter Island's twist is one that uproots your perception of the entire film. It turns out that Leonardo DiCaprio's character Detective Teddy Daniels was a complete and utter fabrication. While he and the audience believe Daniels was visiting the mental facility on Shutter Island to investigate a murder, he's actually a patient who has been allowed to play pretend in an elaborate attempt to try and cure his conspiracy-based insanity. And once you know this, you'll see certain elements of the film in different ways the second time around. If Daniels and his detective partner, played by Mark Ruffalo, were really state-assigned partners, then why the hell would they meet on a boat? I mean, wouldn't they have had a proper briefing before they were actually on the mission together? Also, if Daniels is a smoker like he claims, then why does he constantly have to borrow cigarettes from his partner? All of these little details make more sense when you know where the story is going. Likewise, Daniels suffers from migraines throughout the film as well, explained later on to be a symptom for the time spent without his proper medication caused by the investigation roleplay. There's also the fact that Ruffalo's character uneasily fumbles about with his gun whenever he has it out because he's not really a detective and he's an even worse actor. Number 3. It's the only logical conclusion. The Others. The Others' big twist is that Nicole Kidman's character Grace and her family are all ghosts. They spend the entire film thinking they're the ones being haunted, but it becomes apparent at the end that the exact opposite is actually true. This did the I Am Legend twist better than the I Am Legend movie. Of course, when you go back and look for foreshadowing moments, you're likely to find a lot of clues. The fact that Grace and the kids live in the dark and rarely go outside certainly signposts that something weird is going on, at least to start with. There's also the fact that Christopher Eccleston's father character emerges from the mist surrounding the house one day, he's quiet and distant, and everyone thought he died in World War II. Then he disappears again the next day, which, should have told us everything we needed to know. Ultimately, it gets to the point where the only way to explain all the ridiculousness that's going on is for everyone else to be dead as well. Number 2, the film only shows you half the story, The Sixth Sense. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past 2 decades, you'll know that The Sixth Sense reveals that Bruce Willis's child psychologist character Malcolm is a ghost throughout 99% of the movie. The biggest signpost here is that no other characters really talk to Malcolm except for Cole, the kid who happens to see dead people. This is exacerbated because Malcolm sits in rooms with other characters all the time, and conversations are constantly going on, though no one ever actually reacts to his dialogue. On top of this, Malcolm rarely touches anything or moves any objects when Cole isn't around. This one seems so obvious in hindsight, but was impossible to spot for a lot of people on first viewing. The wool is well and truly pulled over our eyes, mainly because we just assume that Malcolm is still continuing his career as a psychologist, rather than accepting that dead people only see what they want to see and don't know they're actually dead. Number 1. The mother is exactly like the stuffed bird's Psycho. And finally, here's one of the biggest "how did I not notice that" moments in the history of twists, and it's so simple. As you probably already know, at the end of Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 movie Psycho, it's revealed that Norman Bates' mother has actually been dead for years. She isn't the film's killer, as we were all led to believe. In actuality, her son is mentally unwell and has been running around killing people whilst dressed in her clothes and keeping her skeleton stored in the basement the whole time. Joseph Stefano's screenplay includes one incredibly prescient line of dialogue though that hints towards this, allowing Anthony Perkins' Norman Bates to foreshadow the ending in a huge way. Norman says this to hotel guest Marion when she asks about his mother, quote, "Oh, but she's harmless. She's as harmless as one of those stuffed birds." Indeed she is, Norman. Indeed she is. You're not wrong there. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are there any obvious moments of foreshadowing I've missed off here? And did you guys catch these the first time around? Because I know I absolutely did not. Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.